When I was a kid, I believed that I could see the air molecules around me, over my head, in between things. And I think that's one of the earliest inklings I had that I wanted to be a painter, to paint air. And I told that story to a friend of mine over breakfast recently, and he dropped his bagel. He was very interested in the notion that I would claim that I could see air, and that anticipated my becoming a painter. I grew up in the heat of the South Carolina lowcountry, where the air is thick. You could stir it with a spatula practically. So there is some verity in the notion that I could see atmosphere and that I wanted to paint atmosphere. And this is certainly nothing new. Painters will know what I'm talking about. Turner comes to mind, Whistler, Albert Cuyp, some of the 17th century Dutch landscape painters. And even someone like Pollock in the drip paintings, there was a certain devotion to the lambent atmospheric washing over you of the effect of atmosphere, and then trying to muscle that into physical form, into paint. Clive Bell also writes about it being impossible to imagine a colorless space, just as it's impossible to imagine a collection of colors without form. So there's that inextricable union between color and form, and between color and light. Painters know that there's no such thing as empty space. There's no such thing as air in a painting. Air has to be put into form to exist on a two-dimensional surface. Empty space is form, just as a collection of objects are forms. And this is certainly one of the reasons I chose to go to Ireland on a Fulbright Scholarship in 1997. And I thought I would devote this entire episode to that experience, the notion of atmosphere and light and that yearning to paint air. I turned 46 last week, and I can still see the air. In 1997, I had the honor of getting a Fulbright Scholarship, and I chose to go to Ireland to paint for almost a year. I've been very supportive, and still am, of the Fulbright organization, and I've had the pleasure of doing a number of promotional things for them, including this 1999 poster campaign, which we'll put up here for you to see. And most recently, only a couple of months ago, a video portrait of myself and my work vis-a-vis my Fulbright experience, which I believe they're still editing, and once they have it finished, I'll make sure we put it up here on YouTube for you to see. I arrived in Dublin on November 11th, 1997, on the very day that President Mary McAleese was inaugurated. And I remember standing on O'Connell Bridge as her motorcade passed by. I had my knapsack literally on my shoulder. I had just gotten there. And I left to come back to America on May 23rd, 1998, which I think was the very day that they signed the Great Peace Treaty, the Peace Accord. So it was interesting that my entire Fulbright experience was bookended by two events of great national pride. And I also had the honor of getting a free studio space in the Irish Museum of Modern Art, a great space, located in the former horse stables, which were adjacent to the museum complex, which is now located in an old 17th century hospital, a very grand, very austere building with a courtyard and with archways and just a beautiful place. Great museum too. My studio was, because it was in the horse stables, I would often sleep there because I worked late at night, and I remember when the wind would come whipping from the west, I thought I could hear the sound of horses. It was scary. It was also located right next to the Guinness factory. So every afternoon around 5 or 6, the aroma of hops and barley would come wafting through the windows. It was very pleasant. And I had a lot of studio visits, come to think of it, maybe for that reason. I decided to take an apartment to live in Rathmines, which is just on the outskirts of Dublin. And the first place I rented was a Georgian full-floor, one-bedroom flat with a big kitchen and a beautiful sitting room, fully furnished, gigantic bedroom. And to this day, I still don't get the Irish idea of heating. That first night, I was so cold, I lay in bed fully dressed in trench coat, hat, gloves, weeping because I was so cold. The next morning I woke up, went straight to the barrister's office, got out of that lease, and then took a much smaller 2-room flat just down the street. The only problem is that the 2 rooms were on separate floors, so I would wake up and then have to go up the stairs in my boxer shorts to the bathroom and the kitchen and the dressing area, and then I could start my day. I remember the shower was 5'3" and I'm 6'3", and I don't think I've ever been happier in my life. The reason I chose to live and work in Ireland was the very thing I named at the top of this episode, was the notion that I can see air and that I have a desire to paint air. And because Irish weather changes every 20 minutes, it's a virtual panoply of atmospheric effects to be observed. Sheets of rain and fog, and then a minute later, crystal clear with the kind of opalescence that can only occur on an island. It was a feast for a painter. And my general practice is what I would have the Irish Museum of Modern Art studio as home base, and then I would take a knapsack with a change of clothes and a toothbrush and some gouaches and paper. I'd walk across the street to the train station and then just board a train and take it anywhere, and then just get off whenever I felt like it in any town, and just explore and walk, and often I would hitchhike. And because the Irish people are so gregarious and so kind, I would often end up in their homes for dinner that night, and even sleeping over at their houses. And I would leave a sketch or something the next morning to show my gratitude. If my kids ever see this, don't hitchhike like Daddy did. But it was a great, great way to see the country. Another reason I chose Ireland was because I'm interested in Irish Celtic art, specifically Latin style, which was roughly 600 to 400 BC, and is characterized by highly detailed, very intricate designs, rosettes and spirals, all full of the springy vitality of line. For me, Celtic art represents the interior, the intimate, the intellectual, and the Irish landscape is a metaphor for the body, for the physical. It's wet, soggy, up to your kneecaps grass. And the idea that you could experience both of those places on the same island at the same time was I think representative of the general trajectory of my work. That duality of interior and exterior, and the exemplary way that painting can bring both of those to life in the same thing. I would be walking through fields of grass and then come right up on a beautiful example of Irish Celtic art, or Neolithic. Truly a magical place. And one of the most salient experiences of that entire Fulbright was toward the end, I think in early May of '98. I was on a sketching trip in County Cavan, which was my favorite county. And it was hot, and I remember kneeling down by a little brook just to cool off, and I dipped my face in the water, and I became very aware of that ring of water separating that gurgling, rushing liquid below, and then the hot, dry, sun-kissed world above. And the notion that I was having two experiences at the same time. One imaginary, the water below, one more elusive, and then the other one much more physical and much more real above the water. And it turns out that oval, that shape, is a sacred image in Celtic art, and had been a shape that I had been working with for 10 or 15 years prior to the Fulbright. But it suddenly had much more impact and much more truth at that moment. That notion of that ring as being the interface between one world and another. Two places, a world within a world, which is something I talk about vis-a-vis painting often. The idea of creating a place inside of a place. Both of them unfolding at the same time. I like the notion that in front of a painting, you're either looking into it, into the illusory space, or you're looking at it, at the creamy brushstrokes. You can't do both at the same time. It's one or the other. And it's that flickering back and forth that just drives me crazy. I love it.